everyone, and welcome to Curated Classical. The 20th century. It was a century of change, and Can I help you? Every century changes, idiot. Get a better script writer. Okay. Sorry. Around the turn of the 20th century, so many new ideas and inventions were proliferating throughout all of humanity, changing our history forever. Cars, telephones, light bulbs were fast becoming staples of people's everyday lives. New ideas in politics, philosophy, and even psychology were challenging the established order of the systems in place. With the world evolving at seemingly light-speed pace, the arts, which in many ways are a reflection of people and life, were also changing. Artists across all disciplines were questioning the continued use of old methods and practices for making their creative expressions, and this of course included music. For a long time, classical music had been written through the lens of what's called common practice. But that's not to say that each composer didn't have their own unique voice, I'm not saying that, but it was all within the framework of this common practice. Every composer had a common understanding of how harmony should work, how rhythm should work, how form should work. The details of how this common practice works is something I'll go into on this channel at some point, but it's a little too detailed for this video right now. Furthermore, the expressive aesthetic of classical music at the end of the 19th century had come to be dominated by the German-speaking world. And their expressive tendencies were, well, take a listen for yourself. The dominant expressive aesthetic at the end of the 19th century was defined by epic tales full of struggle, argumentation, and resolution, often diving into the extremes of the emotional palette. Big orchestras, swelling strings, blow your ears off brass were must-haves. To make a movie analogy, it's like composers at the end of the 19th century were writing the musical equivalent of epic Lord of the Rings style movies. Now I love big, loud German symphonies as much as the next guy, but by the time the 20th century rolled around, composers had begun to feel that this particular type of musical expression had become overwrought, oversaturated, stale, and they sought a musical expression that was far away from the dramatic bombast of the 19th century symphony. Composers around the turn of the 20th century also had begun to feel that this common practice method that so many composers had used in the past had been pushed to its limits. It had been forced to the edges of its boundaries. It had been stretched to the point of near breaking. And with the world changing so rapidly around them, they felt that music must move on from there. But on to what became the question. And so many composers had a different answer to this question. Claude Debussy, Igor Stravinsky, Arnold Schoenberg, Bela Bartok, Jean Sibelius, Edgar Varese. Every composer had a different answer to the question of where does classical music go from here? And this is what makes classical music of the 20th and 21st centuries in particular so exciting, in my opinion. Instead of composers all trending more or less around a common practice, you have multiple completely distinct styles of music all evolving at the same time. Multiple pathways that music was taking simultaneously. It's like a single family tree that branches out into multiple directions, forming very distinct and separate clans all around the world. This not only makes the lineage of musical styles that much more interesting to explore, but it also did wonders for the diversity of classical music. I've said it so many times on this channel, and I'll say it many more times. There are so many different ways of making music. And in my opinion, it's the 20th century in classical music where this endless potential for diversity of musical expression and thought really comes to fruition. Now, this is an introduction video to a series of videos I'm planning to make. The progenitors of 20th century classical music. I'm still workshopping that title. The 6 composers I mentioned previously are the composers who, in my estimation, really started it all. They're the composers who, if you track the pathways of musical style back from today to the beginning of the 20th century, you find these 6 composers at the beginning of each path, if that makes sense. And I want to introduce you guys to each of these composers one by one, not only to introduce you to them and their music, which is absolutely wonderful, but also to lay the groundwork and form the context from which so much of the other music we'll be talking about on this channel was born. That's a little bit of a weird way to say that, but I'm going with it. I'm sticking with it. Shut up. So with that out of the way, I am out for now. If you enjoyed this video, please press that subscribe button, hit the like button. In the next video, we'll be talking about the rebellious Frenchman, Claude Debussy. I'll see you then. Bye.